week's episode of Mobile Suit Gundam Iron-Blooded Orphans was incredibly shocking. Not in the sense that we got our very first glimpse of Gundam Flauros, or that we actually got to see the Gundam Vidar go into battle. No, the most shocking element of this week's episode has to be when we learn that Naughty, the old mechanic, is dating Marybit Stapleton. Who freaking knew? Seriously, giant robots and political intrigue aside, isn't this like a really shocking moment for the series? Honestly, Chad's reaction to it in this episode was identical to mine, but honestly it makes sense. They're one of the few adult people on the series, and they seem to get along quite nicely. That scene at the beginning when he pats her on the head makes a lot more sense now, and I can understand that a lot of shippers are going to be very upset about this, thinking that for some odd reason Marybit and Orga were going to end up together, but honestly, their relationship was more of like a mother-son relationship, maybe even an aunt and nephew, with Marybit being Aunt May and Orga being Peter Parker. With that being said, this was another solid episode of Iron-Blooded Orphans, which decided to pump the brakes a little bit, give us some great storytelling, characterization, and of course some kick-ass mobile suit action at the end of the episode. First up is Hush Medi, who's continuing to do his mobile suit training, and he's actually having a mock battle with Chad. Chad is incredibly fired up in this episode, but he probably got deflated when he learned that Mr. Naughty was actually dating Marybit. He almost seemed a little disappointed by this, as if he wanted to get with her. Naze has a meeting with the bigwigs of Tewaz, and a lot of them don't necessarily agree with the fact that Orga has been given so much personal freedom, without asking for the permission from some of the big higher-ups of the group. But Naze says, look, if anything goes wrong, you can have my head on a silver platter. But ultimately, this episode is all about teasing the viewer. We get a lot of new mobile suits in this episode, and only really one of them gets to go into action. There's this one we see at the beginning of the episode, which is completely white and has this massive horn coming out, and it's incredibly reminiscent of the Gundam Unicorn. But there's also the Gundam Flauros, which is the brand new Gundam frame which is going to be used by Tekkadan. We don't really get to see much of it, basically just a still shot of its face, but it looks awesome. I love the look of its grill on its face. It looks completely different from some of the other ones that we've seen, almost like giant teeth. I'm wondering who this mobile suit is going to go to as well. I mean, the obvious answer is, of course, Hush Medi, because he needs his very own distinctive mobile suit, and he's a character that they've been building up quite a bit, but it could also potentially go to Eugene, who really wants one. Hell, it could even go to Shino, but let's face it, it's probably going to go to Hush Medi. All I know is I can't wait to see that thing in action, but at the end of the episode, we finally get to see Mecha Gaelio getting in his brand new Gundam, the Gundam Vidar, which is just freaking awesome. They haven't revealed his identity quite yet, but there's more evidence to show that this masked guy is indeed Gaelio, especially in the way that he fights. Before, he always used a lance. Now he's using these giant rapier swords, which he can constantly reload if they get broken. The overall design of Gundam Vidar is very sharp. That's what I really love about it. It's also incredibly sleek. It's got thrusters on the knees. Its feet can transform into bladed weapons. And like I said, it's got like this endless supply of massive rapiers, which he uses to take out his enemies with extreme precision, flying around, practically stabbing them once, and almost dancing in battle. There's a great sequence where you get to see him taking out all of these mobile suits from this economic block, and he just makes it look so damn easy. It was a great introduction to Gundam Vidar and seeing it in action, and despite the fact that he claims he's doing all of this for revenge, he might have another ulterior motive in mind, at least according to Julieta. At the end of the episode, we also get a highly disturbing scene of McGillis Farid and Almeria, where I swear to God I thought they were going to kiss in this episode, and if they'd have done that, I think honestly it would have gone too far. And honestly, they were pushing the envelope in this episode. I made it clear in my previous reviews that I do not trust McGillis Farid, because he has done some really underhanded shit. He's the one who killed Gaelio and is taking care of his sister. I don't know if he actually has good intentions here, but he just comes across as a real creep in this episode right here. I still don't know whether to trust him, and I still think he has bigger plans aside from just reforming Gallarhorn. So what's the rundown on this week's episode of Iron-Blooded Orphans, the Old Man and Mary bit? I'm still scratching my head about that. I really do think it's funny, though. And Naughty, good for you, man. I think that's pretty funny. I can't wait to see more of the interactions between these characters now that we know that they're in a relationship. But this is also kind of like a big death flag. The fact that we have two characters who are in love with each other just means their heads have been put on the chopping block. And honestly, you could say that for pretty much every character on the show, but whenever they bring up something like that, it just makes it seem like something really bad is going to happen to them. There's also just a ton of other little moments in this episode that I think are really good, which is again why I think that Iron-Blooded Orphans has some of the best characters from any Gundam anime. There's a small moment between Akihiro and Ride, who's giving him just a little bit of advice about training and how he shouldn't skip his meals. It's little moments like these that make these characters seem real. So this was a fantastic episode of Iron-Blooded Orphans, which you should definitely check out, with lots of great character moments and some really great action and promises of more great storytelling to come. Iron-Blooded Orphans Season 2, I think, has already surpassed the first season in many ways. It just seems like it's so much better in the story that it's trying to tell, now that we no longer have to, like, establish all of the main characters. Really, that's what the first season was all about, was just establishing who the characters are and the setting that they live in. But now I really think it's truly coming into its own, and I can't wait to see what they're going to do for the rest of it. Things are looking bright for the future of Iron-Blooded Orphans, and you should definitely check it out. I'm giving this week's episode right here a 5 out of 5, a super solid episode that any Gundam fan should definitely check out. If you did watch this one, make sure to tell me what you thought about it in the comment section below, and what you hope to see from the rest of the second season of Iron-Blooded Orphans. Thank you guys again for watching this review. Make sure to like it, subscribe to the channel, and leave me a comment or two. I will see you next time, and as always, stay dandy, baby!